Welcome in. It is day 200 and you're speaking to the Meeples Champion. That is right. It is day 200. It is unbelievable to think that we have been here for 200 straight days reviewing games and trying to get out all sorts of high, low, medium quality, in my eyes, but quality that could hit for anywhere for all of you. And that's really the whole goal here. It's not about me picking out my favorite games. It's about me picking out every game I've tried and giving you a perspective. And sometimes you line up with somebody and those perspectives are huge. And sometimes you don't. You have the opposite opinion. And either of those are great because if you fit into an area where you agree with me or you disagree with me, this channel works. It helps to guide you toward a game that may not have seemed interesting to you, but you go, man, I like 9 out of 10 that he likes, so maybe I like this. Or a game you're considering to buy and you go, I don't tend to like what he likes and he loves this game. Maybe it's not for me. That's the whole point, and that's what I'm hoping to do for everybody here. Well, to do that, you can't just look forward, you have to look back. And today, I'm looking back to a classic. This is a game that, despite never making it in my rotation anymore, it's still in my mom and dad's collection. I asked if I could borrow some of their classics to kind of throw into the routine here as we get into this latter half. You know, we're closing in here, trying to get to the 3/4 mark, hopefully, in the next 2.5 months. And that would be Clue. Now, you can tell that this is an old classic because it's got some tape on the box. This is the game that my parents owned that we've played since I was a kid. So this is quite the oldie. And Clue is a simple game. Obviously, most of you should know this, but let's just go through the basics. You have had a murder, and you're trying to figure out who did it. And it can be any of the 6 characters. So each of you represents one of the characters moving around, but you're going to shuffle up these cards, and they're going to represent the rooms of the mansion you're in, the characters that you are accusing of, and the murder weapon. And your goal is to figure out who did it with what weapon in what room. Now, the idea of the game that's annoying to many people is the fact that you have to still roll this die to make movement. The game shouldn't be about that. The fact that somebody else could be way ahead in clues, not because they were smarter in how they deduced things, but because they just can't make the move. That is wildly annoying. So it can be frustrating, and that's a part of the game that I don't like and why I've moved beyond that. But the part of the game that's great is you have to ask somebody to if they have one of these things. And then if they have any of them, they have to show you, but only one of them. So straight up, you could say, okay, it's a process of elimination. You're slowly asking people different questions, trying to eliminate possibilities. And when you get to those 3, now you guess and you're good. That's technically true, but there's so many levels here. Some people might decide all they need to do is make sure they've immediately got one item and they're good. And now they can take a wild guess. Other people might have, because of your starting hands, a massive advantage. If you get lucky and you draw 5 of the weapons and you're like, oh, well, I know it's not that weapon, cross it off the list. I mean, that's a huge advantage. Or you can do what I like to do. When I played the game, what I enjoyed doing was I really paid attention to everything people asked. Because if I noticed that one of my sisters asked another one of my sisters about a particular person and a particular weapon, and I went, well, I mean, they have the person, I got that info from them. So they don't need to know that. And the weapon is from me, so they don't know that. And then he mentioned a room, and the other person shows them a card, I can cross that room off. I've now deduced that has to be the thing they're showing them. And that's the way I like to play it, giving me this extra level that for beginners or even intermediate players who back in the day would play games like this, really would blow them out of the water. They just couldn't stand up to that type of deduction. Now, me and my sisters played a lot, so we all started getting to that point, and it was very competitive. Well, with that being said, why don't we jump in and do our 7-category test and see where this game lands for us today. When it comes to that art, the game board is classic. It's an old school look. I don't feel like it's something that would grab, but at the same time, it's still Clue. So you kind of have to judge it in two ways. This is the nostalgia. I walk into a board game store, I see this board and I see the name Clue, I get excited. But unless I see it's been revamped, I'm not getting interested. So that's from somebody who remembers the game. What about somebody who doesn't remember the game? Personally, I don't think that this box works anymore. In its time, it was actually one of the better boxes, but today I don't think it does. So for me, the art has to be a thumbs down. Your components. So your components are kind of a little all over the place. All of your weapons are metal. All of your pieces are these almost like the sorry tokens in plastic. You got your cards. The cards are fine. They're kind of like community chest and chance cards from Monopoly quality. So they're good. They're not great, but they're not bad. I think the components are good quality. They're just a little bit higher quality than need to be. And because of that, that probably rose up, especially back in its original day. But even today, if it's still that level, that's rising up your price of the game. And for me, that doesn't work for me. You don't need to be putting an upgrade level in components with a basic version game. And for me, this game, I mean, you could have done those weapons. I mean, if you want to go really basic, it's just a little cardboard cutout. You know, hey, here's a little square version. It's the the wrench, it's the gun, it's the knife. Or you could have done plastic versions. But to do it in metal, I mean, that's high quality. So I'm going to continue with this and say that even though the components are really good, I think they went a little bit too high. I think they put too much effort into making those components. Now that being said, let's back away for a second and say there's not a lot in this game. So even though it is high quality of the components, and that might have rose up the price of the game, there's also not a lot of stuff to grab in the game. So it's not like they have a load of components. So while my gut tells me from what they did bring that price up, I would want to give it a thumbs down. Components are really good, and there's not enough of them that I think that offsets that price a bit. I will give them a passing mark and give them a thumbs up. Your price. So I honestly haven't picked up a game of Clue in a long time. My assumption, based on the last time I saw a game of Clue in a store, would be that this has got to be in that $40 range. It shouldn't be that expensive. It's not like this is a game that's not, that's hard to find. You could find Clue. They may not be in the game stores that you and I go to normally, because we go to the upgraded, top of the line, big game stores. If anybody here is from the Massachusetts area, I go up to Pandemonium, or I'll go to Diversions and Puzzles. I'll go to the Queen's Gambit. These are top of the line game stores. They have our type of games. It's packed with the new. So they're not going to have really any of these older games. But if you go to some smaller game stores, if you go to some, if you go to a Newberry Comics, you're going to probably find a Clue in a Newberry Comics. And it's going to be in that range of about 40. So I think that the price is okay. I don't love the game that I'm getting, but I think for those of you that like this game, $40 is acceptable. I'll give it a pass. Difficulty. So the difficulty to me comes down to, yes, it is still trying to deduce something, but it's almost mathematical. Anybody who knows what they're doing, if they're against people who also know what they're doing, it's just who can gather the intel quick enough to be able to use it to know what those questions mean by the other players, compared to those who are basically brand new or have just not gotten to the point where they know how to do that yet. You don't want to get matched up with an expert player because you're going to just get crushed and you won't enjoy the game. The game, though, to me, there's just not a lot there. It's got a great idea, but if you could take away the die, take away that movement, and add something else in to give it another parameter, I think that'd be much better. That being said, overall, because it's not going to challenge your experts, your experienced, and because it's going to be, to me, really just made for those entry levels, I'm going to say thumbs down. Replayability. let's jump back into this. I said it is good for entry levels, and it is nostalgic. You still get to play this game with, family and with your older friends who are just like, I'm not into games, but I'll play the old games. There's some possibilities here. And so, because of that, I can't just kick out the fact that when you do get this game down, you can play this a few times in a row. Clue always has that option to put it out and be like, oh man, let's try again. Let's try again. I used to play on weekends at my sister's and we play 3 or 4 games in a row. And I think for the friends who want to play this game, they may only pull it out when they're getting together on, that rare weekend once every 3 to 6 months, but they're going to play it a few times. It's not going to be a one and done. So I'll give it a thumbs up on replayability. Keys to victory. Again, you have to judge this in 2 ways. The first way is, are there a lot of keys to victory? It's really not. You need the intel. That's all there is. And then there's the other side of, well, okay, so it's there. Is everybody equal? No, because the intel is based on access and being able to ask the questions. And you can't ask the questions if you're rolling low numbers. That die hurts the ability for the keys to victory to be fair. Because of the die, your keys and mine can be massively different in one game. And I don't like that. I don't like the idea that I don't have an equal opportunity to win because a random luck factor has determined that by the end of the game, for every time I got to ask a question, you got to ask 2, or you got to ask 3. That's not fair to me, and that ruins your keys to victory. So it has to be a thumbs down. Finally, unique. Is it unique? I don't think it's much of a surprise that this game is like, 50, 60 years old? Probably older. I don't know when it came out. All I know is it's inspired a lot. And because of that, it's obviously not unique anymore. Inspiration games, games that were at one point massively popular, their popularity inspires players to become game creators and make better games. In the case of this one, when I was a kid, if you were to ask me my 5 favorite games, this was on the list because there wasn't a lot out there back in the late 80s, early 90s that I was able to play. But you go and you say, can you pick your favorite version of a Clue game today? I'd have to say like Murder in Hong Kong. Like that's a fantastic game that's clearly be inspired by this. And there's other games like that. There are plenty of games that give you the ability to get clues, to be trying to figure out who done it, and to have to either be working as a team or be working against the rest of the team, and even better so, to find out that somebody else that you're facing is the murderer and that they're trying to throw you off of it. Whereas this doesn't have that. Even though one of you at the table, if you're playing all 6, is the murderer, they don't know they're the murderer. And if they had added that piece in, that might have made this more fun. So I have to say, when it comes to unique, thumbs down. Overall, what do I think? It's a great game for nostalgia. I am not against anybody having a couple nostalgia games on their shelf. And if you want to grab a game that was from your childhood, one of those games from the 80s or the 90s that is a nostalgic game that you think is worthy to play still, or at least is a name that when somebody comes in, they'll be like, wow, Clue. It is Clue. I'm not going to say Risk. I'm not going to say Monopoly, because I think that those games have really, really lost their edge in the competition. In what they do, there are hundreds of better versions. But when it comes to Clue, there are better versions, but Clue still holds its own in a little corner. If you say to me, play these games from your childhood, Clue to me is one that I could be like, I'll play it once. I don't want to play it a boatload, but I can play it. I'll play it with my daughter at some point. I'll teach her it because it was a foundation of my early gaming. And I think that if you're like me and you want to have a game you can still play with your parents, with your older friends, or a game from your childhood you want your younger kids to get to see what you used to play, this is the one I would invest in. That being said, I don't think this is a game you have to buy and you have to play. It easily is a game that I would say is, if you're looking for nostalgia, head of the class. If you're not, ignore it. Well, it has been day 200, and we've been speaking about the game Clue. And you've been speaking to the Meeples champion. Like, share, subscribe, and check down below in the description where I'll be adding in an Amazon link in case you want to get this game for your collection. Until next time, I'll talk to you tomorrow.